What's up, guys and girls? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Roman, and well, did the X5 blow up? No, it didn't. I thought it was gonna blow up. I was extremely concerned that it blew up. Actually, I had no idea what was going on. I was just so here's what happened. Let me just jump in. Okay, so we have a 2011 X5. It's the 3.5, the 3.5i, whatever, the N55 engine, 3-liter inline six single turbo. Does that matter? Maybe a little bit for the story, but not necessarily. So last week, my wife came home after picking up our daughter, and she says, "Hey, I got a warning light on the dash. Something about the car not charging, and then the fan, like this fan right here, like this part, is acting like super wonky." And I'm like, what does that mean? And she's like, it just does what it wants to do. Like nothing I do changes what it's doing. She's like, it's kind of like blowing like low and then high, low and high. And she's like, I turned the car off when we just got home and it didn't turn off. I was like, ooh, okay, that is kind of wonky. So I go, she's also like low oil light came on. That's a separate story. Kind of knew that was coming up. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let me go look at it. So I go look at it and put some oil in. It's just like a quart of oil. It was kind of expecting it, and check the car over, start it up. And if you know these engines, like the N55s are direct injected engines, they kind of click a lot. Like it's like tick, 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 tick. So, but no other weird noises. The belts are on, like nothing's leaking, like nothing's obvious that there's a problem. So I get inside the car, notice the fan is doing the weird wonky thing. And even though when I turn it off with the controls, you can still hear the fan running, but it's almost like the flaps inside closed to kind of direct where they go. But the fan the fan motor is still going, and then you can, when you turn it back, like the fan speed back up, it opens a flap. It almost sounds like there's like a pressure release. So I'm like, okay, that is really weird. So, all right, I'm like, let me go try to take the car for a drive. Let's see. Oh, and that warning she was mentioning that about the car not charging wasn't there anymore. So I'm like, let me go drive the car. I go drive the car, just do a quick loop, come back almost to the exact same spot I was already at, and I hear this like weird thump, like somewhere in the middle to back of the car. I don't think I drove over anything. I still don't actually know what that was. That still needs to get probably looked at. But after that thump, I just get like a Christmas light show of warnings and lights going off, and I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like looking at my my nav, because it displays all the things, and it's like 4x4 malfunction, transmission malfunction, stability control malfunction, ABS malfunction. I'm just like, oh God, okay, something just went really wrong. And it says like, oh, your car will remain in drive. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like pulling it to the parking spot where I just kind of started off where my wife left the car, and the car puts itself in neutral, just like that. I'm like, all right. So I put like the front of the car in, but the back needs to be kind of like realigned, and it's sort of like on the bends. I don't really want the back sticking out. So I'm like, okay, maybe the car went to like limp mode. Let me turn it off, turn it back on. That usually kind of gets it out of limp mode if it could. So the first time I did it, nothing. All the same stuff. Everything stayed the same. Car wouldn't go into drive, actually. It would just stay in neutral. And so I did it one more time. Luckily for me, everything went back to normal. I was able to park the car. I shut the car off, and I'm like, let me go check if there's something going on in the engine bay. Let me look underneath the car in case, I don't know, my drive shaft fell out. Who the hell knows, right? I mean, nothing's scraping, nothing's smoking, but who knows? So, but I'm very puzzled. And again, I look underneath, I look in the engine bay, belts are there. Again, everything's normal. Like, I'm like, all right, okay, all right, what do I do? So I'm like, well, probably the best idea is I'm gonna go move the car to my carport, get it off the street, and then if I gotta work on it, it'll be there. If I gotta charge it, I have somewhat of access to some kind of outlet out there. And car won't start. Like all the lights come on, fully bright, but the starter isn't clicking, the engine's not turning over, just nothing. Like none of the the little noises the car's even trying to start. So I'm like, wonderful. Okay, so all right, next step, I go get my car, some jumper cables. I was able to jump start the car, let it charge a little bit off of my car, got the car into the carport, and luckily for me, my dad is a retired mechanic. Like, he's been a mechanic his whole life. And, I'm making assumptions. Like, I'm like, it's probably the alternator. Like, but it could also be the battery. But the battery was replaced not too long ago. So I'm sort of like, searching the internet, like seeing how much an alternator is, or like, oh look, there's also a voltage regulator that sits on top of the battery. That could be bad. I call my dad, and I'm like, Dad, like, this is what's happened. Like, what should I do? And he's like, don't buy anything. Go get the car tested. He's like, most shops have testing equipment. They'll let you know if your alternator's like putting out a charge, if your battery's taking the charge, whatever. Because he's like, you never know. He's like, it sounds like an alternator, but like something could have like fell apart inside of your battery. Like, things happen. So I'm like, okay. So there's like some really good advice for everybody. Doesn't matter what it is, go get it checked first if you can. Don't just throw money at a car. Like, parts have gotten expensive. They're getting hard to, there's delays on everything. Like, just go get it checked. Luckily, AAA does a battery service check, which they do like the whole thing. Well, they can see if the alternator's working. They can see if it's the voltage regulator, all that stuff, right? So I called them in the morning. They came out. They asked if I could back the car up a little bit out, because we have like a long tandem carport. Car won't start. So actually no, car started. I backed it out, and then when I went to go move it back in, the car wouldn't start. So actually no, sorry. Backed the car out, turned it off. They put their equipment on, asked me to start the car. At that point, the car wouldn't start. The car actually wouldn't start. And then when things started also getting weird. So while they were doing testing, my windshield wipers came on by themselves. My my taillights started doing some wonky stuff, just like flickering to their own like random beat. And so they said the alternator isn't putting out a lot of voltage, or very little voltage. And so it's very likely it's that. He's like, they said, but it could also be your battery. Not sure why they said that, but kind of keep it short for you guys, it was the alternator. In fact, the next video coming out here is going to be me showing you how to replace your alternator. And there's one major hack on how you can actually do this yourself without doing a ton of work. And I do mean a ton of work, okay? This even took me a while with the hack, because I was trying to like kind of figure some things out, but hopefully that next video will save you a lot of time, if, again, that's something you guys need. So I was... Luckily, I was able to source an alternator locally. We picked it up. I put it on at night. It took forever. And then I was able to basically jump start it next morning, because it was getting late, off of my car. And it's been fine ever since. But the whole point of this video, outside of the first little nugget I gave you, is I'm just going to be specific to BMW, but I'm sure this applies to other models. Other makes and models. BMWs do some really, really wonky things when the battery's low. So don't freak out. I've never had one do this much stuff, but like, don't freak out, especially if it's telling you like, hey, like bad charging or something's with the charging. Get the battery tested, get your alternator tested. That is very likely the cause of a bunch of other issues. Because honestly, like, with mine, if I didn't have that weird thump thing when I was driving, I probably wouldn't have assumed that something was broken in the car, like to the level that I did. But because of that thump, I thought something happened like in the drivetrain, like something, maybe my diff broke or my transmission gave out or something else. Because, it was like transmission, 4x4, this and that, and I was just like, what is going on? You know, and I just got new tires put on. So I was like, I don't know, like maybe when they lifted it up, something got like moved or something got shifted. And then like now, like we drove it and God knows what's going on, right? So, but that's it. That's my word of warning. So please, again, please like, hit subscribe. If you got some other comments to add some value, please do so maybe somebody can learn something. And I'll see you guys in the next one. So again, the next video will be the N55, probably the same process as the N54 alternator replacement. That'll be coming out shortly. Take care, guys. See you next one. Bye.